about like good evening, good afternoon, whenever you're watching. How we doing? This is Touchdown in Paradise. I'm Russ Morgan filling in for Justin tonight as he's at a birthday dinner. Justin, you'll be missed, but we can't wait to you'll be back here. You deserve a break. You do an unbelievable job. So we'll see you next week. Have a great dinner. I'm Russ Morgan, host tonight. To my right,
I'm Pete.
And I'm Joe.
Boys, how we doing tonight? We For me on Saturday, I was like, it's going to be a down Saturday. I wasn't expecting too much besides one game. Was a little surprised. Any opinions on the week? How we feel?
I mean, it was great. Alabama lost, dude. I'm freaking feeling amazing right now. It was a great weekend of college football, man. I mean, a lot of good stuff. Notre Dame got the job done against undefeated Army, so no big deal. But no, a hell of a good week, man. A lot of wrenches thrown into the mix right now as to what's going to happen. So I'm excited, dude.
Yeah, I mean, before we got on, I know me and Russ were texting, and it was like we had one easy week where it was like straightforward, nothing crazy was going to happen, and then one weekend in, we have chaos at least in one conference, potentially in a couple others. So it'll be fun to see how the next couple of weeks play out.
Well, Pete, you brought that up. We'll kick right into the SEC because this is where the action was happening, which I mean, for me, I was like, we got Indiana, Ohio State, we got Big Ten, we got a little Notre Dame game. That's probably about it. And then SEC is where all the action is. So you kick it off Saturday night, Oklahoma in Norman, which is having a terrible year, bowl eligible now, takes down Alabama 24-3. They don't even score a freaking touchdown. Jackson Arnold, 68 passing yards, 131 rushing yards. Alabama gives up 257 on the ground. I don't know if you're winning too many games. Milroe, 164, 3 interceptions. Joe, were you watching this game? What were your thoughts? Because I mean, Oklahoma's it's been a very up and down year. What were your thoughts of the game?
Well, talk about an absolute turnaround of a season. I mean, a couple weeks ago, not even a couple months ago, Texas just beats the shit out of Oklahoma. Wasn't even like Oklahoma knew what direction they were going or what. And then now we're talking about them upsetting Alabama pretty handily. I mean, as you said, Russ, they don't score a touchdown. They allow Oklahoma to just run all over them. And the other interesting thing is, Milroe, 3 touchdowns. It's like he has games where he is – and we put up – comparisons, the last time we talked about him, and then he can put up games like this one where he puts up 3 interceptions and looks like he should be working at the local McDonald's. So it's like, which Milroe's going to show up? I mean, that's why Alabama season is so volatile, is because you never know what Milroe's going to show up to any game.
Great talk there, Joe. Pete, I'm gonna give you a little 2-bar. What are your thoughts about the game? And do you think this is Alabama's done with the playoff conversation now?
I think they're done with the conversation. Yeah, I mean, you can't lose this game to an unranked team the way that they did. I mean, Jesus, the quarterback only threw it 11 times on Oklahoma, and he literally just ran all over them. Like, that defense got destroyed, dude. It's basically like what Georgia did, except they threw the ball. The last 3 quarters of that game, kind of, where they just like were going at him. They had no answer for him. But there, they were able to outlast him. They just literally, the Alabama defense is not good. A lot of runs from Milroe too, cutting back in, going outside, getting tackled, going inside. And the Oklahoma defense isn't like spectacular. I know the coach is known for it, but over the past couple of seasons, they haven't been that great. So I think they're done. I don't think there's any way you can put Alabama in. I mean, they're what, 8-3 right now, and their losses are not good losses. Now, they had a great win over Texas. They beat over Georgia. But yeah, just the losses are not good losses, man. So I think they're done. It would have made it a lot easier. We'll get into Ole Miss had won. That would have made things a little bit more clear cut. But I think Alabama's no way they're going to make the college football playoff, and they shouldn't be in the SEC title game either.
Well, Joe, yes or no? Do you think they're done? Alabama's done, and
they're done. They're not in the conversation anymore.
And then, do you know, Oklahoma's been up and down. Pete, solid job there. Is this a program, is this win a yes or no to get the program back where we've seen Oklahoma in years past? Pete?
Dude, it's a good win. It's a dominating win. I mean, especially for how Alabama's been this season. I don't know if it's necessarily getting them back, like all the way back, but it definitely puts them on the right track. I mean, this was a huge win for Brent Venables. He needed this. I mean, you're going up against a guy, your first time coaching against him in the SEC. You got to beat him. And it's just the Boer's first time there. You can't let him come in and just keep kicking your ass like Saban would be doing. So, yeah, I think it's a huge win for them. Is it like not career defining, but like, is it going to completely change the trajectory of that program? I don't think so, but I mean, a huge statement win. It's definitely going to move the needle a little bit.
Wait, I mean, Joe, you got to. I mean, I know it might not. I think for me, I think it's moving the needle. But do you think this win kind of moves the needle more because they probably had a lot of recruits in the stands? You beat Alabama, who was what, top 10 at the time. Do you think that kind of moves the needle a little bit?
Oh, no, it most certainly is. It's a tone setter. Not for this year. You chalk off this year as to, second year under Venables, and then you're developing the system. You're starting to get your own guys in, and, straightforward. Whenever you beat a top 10 team, it looks good for your team, and it moves you in the right direction. It also gives your guys some belief of, hey, we can compete and win in the SEC. And I think for a while there, we were talking of, Texas has handled it, easily. They, easy transition for Texas, where Oklahoma, we were saying, maybe, obviously they didn't make the wrong choice, but did they make not the best choice? And winning like this, 24-3, so dominantly, they're obviously going down the right road.
Well, you brought it up a little earlier, Pete. So Ole Miss, the Lane train just goes in the swamp and gets stuck in the mud 24-17. Do you think, I mean, for me, I think they're tied. Their playoff hopes are done. Joe, or do you think their playoff hopes ended there up in Gainesville?
Yeah, that's another one. Ole Miss and Alabama were in the same boat. They had to win out and if they did, they were in. But since they lost, no, both of them are out. Ole Miss is out of the conversation too.
I mean, they're done.
I bet it could just be me. It doesn't seem like Lane can get the big gritty wins. I don't know, Pete. What do you think about that?
Yeah, every year I think he can, and he lets me down, dude. Like, you can't let this Florida team beat you. If you're going to be a premier team in the SEC, for how shitty Florida was this year, you can't let them beat you. You just can't do it, man. And it's just like, he's got to win these games, dude. And I mean, it's just like ridiculous. And I know it's only a touchdown, and you're on the road in Gainesville in the swamp. It's not easy to win there. But dude, you think if that was Saban with Alabama going in there, he wouldn't fucking lose that game. Like, you can't. I mean, Kirby Smart's not going to lose that game. You can't lose that game, especially with the coach who's possibly going to be gone. And this win maybe changes that. I don't know. But he's fighting for his life. And his players responded that way, and the Ole Miss players did not. They did not have the same tone, nothing, man. So, yeah, I'm out on the Lane train until he actually gets to an SEC title game.
I mean,
otherwise, I am out on him forever.
I mean, Napier, they did say before this game, Napier is coming back. And, he has had two nice, solid back-to-back wins, beating LSU, who was 22 at the time, 2017-16, and then beating Ole Miss. So, I mean, I think they're showing a little life up there in Gainesville. They won't back down, as my boy Tom Petty would say. So,
hey, all I'm saying is they could say he's coming back, but had he lost and gotten obliterated by Ole Miss and then lose to Florida State, he could have still been gone. I mean, who knows? He might still be gone. But, yeah, regardless, it looked like Florida was fighting for their life, and Ole Miss had no answers, and they didn't get gritty enough. I mean, it just – and the final play, the pass, I mean, the pit, it's just like it just seemed disjointed. And Lane's an offensive guy. So, like, he's got to have those things down, man, with the quarterback and everything. It just seemed a little disjointed at the end. Yeah, they deserve to lose.
Well, speaking on another team in the SEC who's set up pretty nice this week for a winner-take-all game to get the championship, Texas A&M loses 43-41 to Auburn and in Jordan-Hare, so it's a really tough place to play in 5 overtimes. Now, I'm going to throw it to you, Joe, first here. What'd you think of the game? Do you think there's a shot that A&M can? I don't want to spoil anything. What do you think of this game? What are you viewing for A&M when they play Texas this week?
It's funny. These 3 games had a lot of similarities, in my opinion. You had one team with everything to play for, had the playoffs in their sights, and the other teams, they were looking forward to next year. Start over, start anew. Auburn, Florida, and Oklahoma upset. And it's interesting how that's the story I'm finding out of it. Again, Auburn's 5-6, 2-5 in the SEC, nothing to play for. You have Florida that's now 4-4, and just to quickly touch on that, Billy Napier probably saved his job by winning back-to-back games. And then you have Oklahoma 5 as well, nothing to play for, but yet still showed up and just shellacked them. Now, when it comes to the game, it's surprising, but I think Nick Saban said it at game day. Auburn is a tough place to play. Doesn't matter who you are. And they showed that, go to 4 overtimes, tight game. Auburn just did, just a little bit more to get it over the line.
Pete, thoughts of the game? What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. So, I mean, hats off. I mean, the fans got exactly what they wanted with all those OTs. I mean, Texas A&M, if they win that game, which they should, and obviously they didn't, they'd be, 9-2 right now overall. They would be 6-1 in conference. You'd be right up there with Texas, about to play Texas. God forbid you keep that game closer, beat them. Dude, that's hard to keep you out of maybe the SEC title game, and God forbid anything can happen at that point. So, yeah, just crushing, man, just crushing. You got to win that game. You just have to. And I know Auburn's hard to play there. I mean, so is Gainesville. Obviously, these teams. I mean, Norman, that's not easy to play there too. So maybe that's a little bit of a mixture of a tough environment where the fans are like, "Fuck it, we're going to bring it and try to beat them," and the teams get behind them. And you get down early, it's hard to come back from some of those things. Now, Texas A&M was give and take, unlike Alabama. But, yeah, man, just you can never underestimate the atmosphere in the SEC. You can't say the same thing about any other conference or independence. I'll be the first to say Notre Dame, it's a pretty easy place to play for incoming teams, But SEC, god dang, dude. So I'm happy. It was great. It's mixing things up. I'm excited about it. But, yeah, dude, A&M had everything right there for how they started the season, losing to Notre Dame, and just like how it was going. They had everything there to possibly make the push, and they couldn't get it done. So it is what it is.
I mean, a lot of years the SEC's like this. There's been a couple years in and out, but I mean, you see this year and in years past where the SEC's been so dominant, where the BCS or the college football playoff with 4, they'll put more SEC teams in there because it's so great. I'm like, this year, even though they're going to play in 5-5 teams, you're going to play in, the Swamp, or you're playing at Jordan Hare and Auburn there, and it is just a terrible environment. Quick rundown, SEC scenarios. Georgia's in. They play Georgia Tech this week. Winner of the night game, Texas A&M, Texas. Great battle. We haven't seen it in a long time, so I'm really excited. Moving to the Big 12, boys. Colorado kind of hits a wall, but the Big 12 was nuts too. This was another one. I'm like, I didn't know. And we got 3 really, Colorado hits a wall, loses 37-21 to Kansas. Shador goes for 266, 3 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels from Lawndale High in Southern California goes for 189, 1 touchdown. Devin Neal, 207, 3 touchdowns, 4 receptions, 80 yards. They're 1 away from bowl eligibility. Now, Joe, do you think Colorado has a shot in hell to get into the college football playoffs?
The Big 12 after this week is so confusing to me now. I would say yes, but you have 3 teams at 9-2 ahead of you now. You need basically all 3 of them, and I would guess all 3 of them to lose this week, which I don't see happening. So I have no idea. If you were telling me yes or no, does Colorado make it? I'm saying no. I'm simply saying no. But who knows? We've seen crazier things happen.
I mean, Pete, I'm gonna go to you, Pete. I mean, it kind of you go into Lawrence. Yeah, all these games are happening right in front of you. So you're pretty much saying, we win, we're in. Do you think Colorado's got a sliver to get in, or are they done?
I think a sliver to get in. I think they do. I mean, we talk about teams needing to lose ahead of them, right? I mean, BYU just lost 2 in a row, so what's to say they're not going to lose again? I mean, obviously, the loss that Colorado had is against an unranked team, and ahead of them, you got ranked teams playing each other. So, yeah, there's a sliver, but even if Arizona State loses, you still got. I mean, right ahead of them is Iowa State playing Kansas State. That's a ranked matchup. Both are ranked. So whoever wins and loses, it's a better win or loss than what Colorado had. So, it's tough. I don't know the entire schedule as to what Colorado's record is against some of those same teams. Obviously, they'll have to look at that, say there's a couple losses and Colorado wins. I think the only thing they can do now is go out there and try to literally run up the score as big as they can in their next game. That's really the only shot that they have. But even that game, Oklahoma State, weirdly with Gundy, I know it's not a home game for them, but they have a history of kind of wrecking teams and seasons out of nowhere. So this isn't going to be an easy game. I mean, Gundy's a damn good coach. Not saying Deion's not, but I mean, I can see this game being close. I think if this game's close at all, even if Colorado wins, I don't think they're in it, because it'd just be two back-to-back non-ranked teams that you're going to lose to and possibly barely beat. They got to go out there and drop like 60 on them and hold them to like 10 or 20, and then hope that the eye test, the last thing going into the season with a couple teams losing, puts them up there. But the chance is probably 5%.
I mean,
and less than that to make the actual playoff.
I'm with you. I just don't know. After you lose this game, you lose to Nebraska, who definitely started off hot, but has come down to earth. You struggle with an FCS school, North Dakota State, at the beginning of the year. Granted,
everyone forgets that. Everyone forgets that.
They've won like 6 or 7 national titles in the FCS, but it's still FCS school, and you struggled. You beat them by 7. So I think they're done. I think Prime. I don't know if it's just me. I think these guys are really gracious. Their sportsmanship. All these guys, Shador, they're winning. When they're not winning, they are sore ass losers.
They're crybabies, dude. Yeah, they're just bitching about everything. It's just like you got to handle a win and a loss in the same respect.
On the other hand, we had a great game in Tempe. Arizona State beat BYU 28-23 late. BYU was making a little run there late in the fourth quarter, but Jake Retzlaff overthrew one guy, and then the next pass threw a pick. kind of ended the game there. So Arizona State's in the driver's seat there. If they win, they're in. They got the Territorial Cup this week. The interesting one is Iowa State is in the driver's seat now, and that was, I mean, I don't know, Pete and Joe. I kind of wrote off Iowa State before this. What'd you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, when we didn't even talk about Iowa State last week, so the fact that they're now leading the run is pretty impressive. You know, I'm just looking at what their schedule looks like. I mean, they have a 1-point win against Iowa at the beginning of the season, and then they have a 1-point loss to Texas Tech, and then a 9-point loss to Kansas.
A better loss than Colorado had.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's Utah's still a tough team this year. So I mean, they just topped to Utah this past week. The Big 12 is for me, it's the most confusing thing in the world. I mean, you're reading the scenarios; it's nuts. You got if there's 2 teams at 7-2, they're in. 3 teams. If Colorado loses, it's Arizona State, Iowa State. If Arizona State loses, it's Iowa State, BYU. If Iowa State loses, it's Arizona State, BYU. And if BYU loses and all those 3 lose, shit hits the fan and gets like
who knows?
Wild. Baylor, Texas Tech, Colorado. It's like there's too much to talk about. But the Big 12 is just kind of up in the air. For reading I mean, I could be 100% wrong. I could be dumb sometimes, so maybe I'm a little. Maybe my eyes are a little. I'm being a little stupid. But to me, it seems like Arizona State, Iowa State. If they win, they're in. Is it Joe, Pete? Am I wrong on that? Or
I think you're right. Just especially since how BYU's been playing the last couple weeks. I mean, back-to-back losses.
But I'm just saying the way I'm reading it. Joe, the way I'm reading it, it looks like it's going to be Iowa State, Arizona State if they win.
If Arizona State,
if BYU and BYU wins, they're still got 2 losses too. I mean,
true, but Arizona State beat BYU, so I think because Arizona State beat BYU, they have that over BYU. I agree with you. I think if Arizona State and Iowa win out, they're in it. I think Colorado is wanting your third option.
Colorado, it seems like
chaos.
And a very tough scenario for Colorado.
The only one I don't know is Iowa State, because Iowa State hasn't played BYU or Arizona State. So you have to look at then who have they played. BYU played. That's the thing. You got to find who they played and see how they match those games up. Depending, like, Arizona State played Kansas State, Iowa State plays Kansas State this weekend. So you see how they match up against other opponents.
Well, and I think you got to look at this too. Kansas, of all those 3 teams we mentioned ahead of Colorado, Kansas beat all of them except for Arizona State. And all of those wins were closer than Colorado's loss to Kansas. So I think they'll probably look at that, like the similar schedule, like who to play and stuff. I just looked at that. I don't think there's any way Colorado gets in, like at all.
I don't see Colorado. I got to say is
just simply based on that.
We just had those college football rankings come out, and obviously it'll change in the next 2 weeks. But if Arizona State wins the Big 12, and me being an Arizona Wildcats fan, bear down, they would play Ohio State and just get absolutely taken behind the woodshed and just bend over. And I would love every minute of it. But moving on to the ACC, because the ACC is pretty straightforward. Maybe we get a little craziness this week. Who knows? Because we do have, SMU punched your ticket this week. Miami's got Syracuse, so maybe Syracuse pulls an upset. SMU punches their ticket this week, 33-7 over University of Virginia. Kevin Jennings, 323, 2 touchdowns. Anthony, I don't know how to say his Caladra. I messed it up. Whatever. 1-8, 1-10. I'm sorry. I apologize. They'll either play Clemson or Miami. Now, I went to you first, Pete. SMU is playing. It's a pretty hot team. Do you think SMU, even with the loss, if they play Miami or Clemson, they lose an ACC title, they would get in? And do you think a team, because they're looking like they'll be a lower seed, do you think a team like a Notre Dame, like a Georgia, Penn State, wants to see SMU because they're playing really hot right now after that BYU loss? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if SMU makes it, I actually do think they have a chance, even if they lose in the title game, to make it in. Because what was it last week? We're talking about like 3, possibly 4 SEC teams. I have no idea, but now that Alabama's not going to for sure be in there, I don't think you can put as many SEC teams in this week. So I think they do. I think it's between the Big 12 and the ACC as to who gets an extra team in, maybe. Excuse me. Especially if it's a close loss. Say they go up against Miami, that's who it looks like it's going to be now, or even, God forbid, Clemson somehow gets in. If it's a close loss of whoever's in there, close loss or win, whichever team's if it's close, I think you got a really good shot based on how the Big 12 title game goes, if it's a blowout or something, to get 2 ACC teams in. Now, obviously, maybe you might be looking at the Big 10, maybe get an extra team in there now that we're not going to put as many SEC teams in. It is what it is, but there's a chance any of those 3 gets 1 extra team in now. Big 12, ACC, and Big 10. So I think all of these teams here at the top 3 that are fighting to get in the title game, even if you barely make it in, God damn it, you got to try to win that game or keep it close because you might actually have a chance. I think SMU has a legit shot to win this thing. Miami has had some up and down games this year, and maybe it's a down game in the title game. Now they're going to Syracuse. Looking at the picture here, going to Syracuse, it's away at the Carrier Dome. So it's never an easy place to play, but it's also indoors. So you're not going to have to deal with any weather issues. So I could see Cam Ward lighting it up. I think he's going to take care of business. So it should be SMU, obviously, who's already in it, versus Miami. Unless Miami loses and Clemson wins, we're going to get into some BS there, but I just don't think that's going to happen. And Clemson has a tough game against South Carolina, so we'll see if they even win that. But yeah, I think SMU has a good chance, and the 2 teams in there have a chance to both make it to the final top 12, depending on how the game goes.
Well, Pete, I'm with you because of what happened in the SEC this week and what happened with all those losses. I think SMU, if they play a close, good enough game, I'm not saying you got to keep it to 3 to 7, maybe 14 points. You're in for sure because of what we're not. We'll probably get 3 SEC teams in, but not 4 this year. Just because it happened. But I mean, Joe, in this, we got. They always put Miami finally down a little bit. What is your opinion on Miami? Because we're talking about all these teams with weak strength of schedules. Miami's strength of schedule is not all that great. Besides the 1 win against Florida at the beginning of the year, is starting to look a little better. What do you think of that? Because I mean, Miami shellacked Wake Forest 42-14. Cam Ward looks solid, but I mean, their strength of schedule is like 59th in the. Is not that great.
Yeah, I mean, their strength of schedule, as you said, Russ, is not very good. You also have in my opinion, not a great loss against Georgia. I know no loss is a good loss, but when you're looking at it, you lose to Georgia Tech. You have to win that game. You allow Duke to put 31 points up against you. Louisville 45. They have a very glaring issue on defense.
Yes.
Which I'm glad they dropped Miami a little bit because I definitely think if they go up against SMU, I even think if they go up against Clemson, Clemson's offense, in my opinion, isn't great, but their defense is stout. So, I think both. I think Clemson and SMU could beat Miami right now. I am not really impressed with Miami. Because I think really it's like it's a one-man show. How far can Cam Ward drag Miami? Specifically, how many points? They basically told him put up 60 and hope our defense can stop him a couple times, essentially. So, it'll be interesting to see. I think ultimately, though, Miami beats the crap out of Syracuse. So won't be surprised to see Miami versus SMU in the ACC.
I mean, that's all they have to do. They just got to beat them and they're in.
I'm gonna shoot it to you, Pete. Give us a quick rundown of ACC scenarios of what can play out this week.
Yeah, so right now the top of the ACC is SMU at 7-0 in conference, Clemson at 7-1 in conference, and Miami at 6-1. That's the top three in the ACC. Miami, is in third at 6-1. Miami has one more conference game, which is this week against Syracuse. They win that game, they are in. 1,000%. SMU's already in, so that doesn't matter. What really we get some chaos is if Miami loses and then Clemson wins, they're both going to have 2 losses in conference. Now you're going to go to not strength of schedule, but like against the same opponents where Miami has a slight edge there still, even if they have the same record. So I think Miami still gets in, but it also would depend on if Miami loses, how bad do they lose to Syracuse? And how big does Clemson win? So, yeah, there's still a chance for Clemson. It's small. It's probably gone up slightly from last week, from 10% to maybe 15%. But, yeah, Miami's going to be in. So that's really the only scenario. Now, whoever gets in, as we talked about, a bigger scenario is it's not going to happen. But say like Notre Dame or someone else, an independent or one of those schools lose, that kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing as to maybe who's going to get that extra spot and stuff. But, yeah, it's pretty cut and dry to me. Miami wins, they're in, and SMU's already in. So Clemson's going to be left out. Sad.
Clemson was left out. As of now, I've got some opinions on that. I'm going to save that for the next segment. But we're going to move into the Big Ten. Big Ten, they had the big game right off in the morning. You wake up 9 a.m. on the West Coast, 12 here. You're good to go. You're jacked. And just Ohio State's too much. Like Joe and I said, Justin and Pete, sorry, you don't go against the true blue Big Ten school. They beat Indiana 38-15. Tanner Howard goes for 201, 2 touchdowns. Joe, Indiana, not Iowa, Indiana, are they still a college football playoff team?
That's a great question. I'm going to say yes, but I think it really depends on what goes on around them.
I kind of agree with you too, Joe. Just because of whatever happened, I don't personally agree with it after what I saw this week. After what I saw play out, and I personally don't agree with some of the Big Ten scenarios. But I mean, if you go into I'm going to let you get it. I'm going to let you have your shine on that. I'm not going to ruin it. But Pete, from what you saw this game, how Indiana first real true test of a solid top, 5 team, what Ohio State's number 3 right now. And they kind of, hit the wall, start off strong. The way it started off, I'm like, we're, Justin right off the bat, I'm like, Kurt Sonetti's won the coach of the year, and it kind of hit a wall. Do you think they deserve to be in there, or is this just a product? I mean, we spoke about this last week. All but should beat Purdue this week. Do you think they deserve to be in there because of their strength of schedule? And do you think this is people are going to see this outcome and be like, hey, look what Indiana did. They went 10-1, 11-1. They get into the playoffs. They have a weak strength of schedule. Do you think that's going to, start an outcome? I know it's a low handful, but what do you got, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, watching that game, I felt the same way. I felt Indiana had a chance, and they just fucked up on like 1 or 2 plays at the end of the first half. The execution for a guy who coached under Saban, I'm sure Signetti was freaking furious at the execution. They were dicing them up. The defense for Indiana was playing very good. The offense was flowing. And then the end of the half, where it's 7-7, they give them the ball on the 10-yard line because of a special teams issue, which they had a couple of those. And they shot themselves in the foot. So I don't know. It's a tale of 2 halves. But I thought really Indiana shot themselves in the foot in the first half more than Ohio State was beating them. So I don't know. You look at the final score. It's not as obviously they got more than doubled, but a couple changes here and there. Like Indiana's right there. I feel like, dude. Like, and and I'm saying that as they don't even have the best recruits. They don't have the most athletic guys. But for a half of football, they played them even. If actually kind of outplayed them, they just had a couple bad plays. So I think Indiana's still in. They went up against Ohio State at Ohio State, and they took it to them. It didn't end up the way that they wanted. But my eye test says that they're still in it, and my eye test says they can beat Penn State. They can beat these other fucking schools. So I want them to be in. I want them to have a shot at the title game. Obviously, who knows if that's actually going to happen? But I was actually kind of impressed at how they played, and they just weren't able to outlast. Obviously, Ohio State has better players, so over the course of a game, they just kind of get on top of them and things snowballed. But I was impressed with how Indiana played. I mean, for the most part, and I think it's nothing but upside for them.
I mean, well, you spent $20 million on players this year. You'd hope you have better players.
Well, you would hope. But the first half, it didn't look that way. The first half, it did not look that way.
They get a punt. Was it a kick return, punt return from Alabama transfer Caleb Downs, which he was one of the best defensive players last year as a freshman. I mean, that's a big pick. Penn State narrowly escapes Minnesota 26-25. Kudos.
Barely.
I called that cover. They rode the boat. They rode the boat. But Joe, I'm gonna kick it to you on because I mean the Big Ten looks pretty straightforward, but I'm gonna kick it to you on what we're seeing because it could get wild in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean ultimately there's the 4 teams that we're talking about. We haven't talked about Oregon in a couple of weeks because theirs is pretty straightforward.
Oregon's in. Oregon's.
Oh yeah, no, but again, as you said, some crazy things can happen in that championship game. I think obviously it will be Oregon, Ohio State, unless some crazy things happen in Ann Arbor,
which could happen.
You can't write them off. It's a rivalry game. It's probably one of the biggest rivalry games in college football. But honestly, I think Ohio State should pretty easily handle them. Oh no, correction! It's not at Ann Arbor. It's at the Shoe. I keep thinking it's at Ann Arbor.
But still, I mean, Ryan Day hasn't beat. When's the last time he beat Michigan?
He hasn't beat him in 3 years. So, I mean, I think what's the interesting conversation though is okay. So let's just say Ohio State wins. Ohio State, Oregon in the championship. If Oregon wins, it's straightforward. Oregon won. Then Ohio State's the second best team, so they have the second best highest seed, so they'll probably get the 5 or the 6. And then you have the real discussion, Indiana, Penn State. If you look at the eye test, unfortunately, it kills me to say Penn State has the better record. They played Illinois, who's ranked 16 right now. They played Ohio State a lot closer. So then they get the next one. Where that is, I know ESPN had them at the 6th seed. I think that's a bit too high for them. I think they should be at either the 7 or the 7, 8, or 9. Because again, besides that Illinois win, they haven't really played anyone else. And then there's Indiana. I love the Indiana story. I think ultimately, though, as we said, they ran into Ohio State, and Ohio State is light years ahead of them. So the question is, does Indiana deserve to be there? I would argue yes, but they also need to blow out Purdue. I think they have to put some style points on it. And I think where ESPN had them ranked at the 11th seed is the proper spot, maybe 10, depending who's there after this week. But I think that's really the discussion is if Ohio State wins and beats Oregon, it just flips. So it's pretty straightforward. So really the discussion is Indiana, Penn State, do they both deserve to be in? My argument would probably be no. You bring someone else in, maybe like a Clemson. But that's, I think, a discussion for next week.
I mean, I'm with you too. It's pretty straightforward. Ohio State wins. They play Oregon and Indianapolis. The Oregon's all settled, all in, clinched. But it is Michigan, so you never know what's going to happen in that game. This is, one of the biggest rivalries, if not the biggest rivalry in college sports, one of the biggest rivalries in sports. So you don't know. I'm with you where I think Penn State is all but locked in, even though they don't really have a signature big time win. Yes, they did beat Illinois 16, but no, I mean, you don't score a touchdown against Ohio State. My argument against, I think we kind of flipped this week where we were talking about 4 teams from the SEC getting in. We'll probably get 4 teams from the Big Ten. I would rather see Clemson than Indiana. I think they're a better product on the field than Indiana is. I think maybe Indiana's a year or two too early. But, I mean, I'd rather see Clemson. Pete, what do you think?
I hate Clemson, so I'd rather see Indiana. But I'd be okay if either one of them got in. I'd be okay with it. I'd hate it, but I'd be okay.
Well, yeah, I think pretty straightforward. But if Michigan does pull out the win, shit gets wild. It gets
That's
wild.
True.
And I was, some other notable games. We had your Notre Dame, Pete and Joe's Notre Dame just put the app, just no respect for the military. No respect for the military, boys. 49-14.
It'd be more disrespectful to take it easy on them, all right? We had to house them. Come on, brother.
49-14 over Army. I think Notre Dame's cruising in. I was talking to Joe a little bit of this earlier, and I know we might have had Dano come on. He couldn't make it on today.
Yep.
After they lost the Northern Illinois game, and Justin asked me right off the bat, he goes, do you think Notre Dame's done? And what do you think of Marcus Freeman? I'm like, well, they're on thinner ice, but they're not done yet. I think, and this could just be me, I think if Notre Dame, without the conference championship game, if they lose 2 games, they're out. Joe, what do you think?
No, 100%. Without the conference game, and because they really don't have another big quality win besides that Texas A&M game, they have to beat USC, and they're in. It's that plain and simple. Win and you're in. Lose and you're out. And that's really what you trade for not being in a conference and not having a conference championship is you have to win out or you get 1 loss.
All right, we're going to go a little rapid fire. Pete and Joe, both of you guys being Notre Dame fans, it's a big-time rivalry game. It's SC, so you never want to overlook that game. What's one thing you want to see from Notre Dame this week in this game against USC?
I would like to see our quarterback, Riley Leonard, run the ball very well, control the clock, and also make some crisp, deep balls. I'd like to see some deep throws because he's going to have to do that if we're going to advance into the playoff.
Joe, one thing you'd like to see from Notre Dame this week?
Just continued improvement in the pass game.
And also, one more point. If USC was ranked high, we could afford to lose this game. They're not ranked. We can't fucking lose. So regardless, we can't lose to them. Can't have 2 unranked losses in a season if you're going to make the playoff and be independent.
Me, Joe, Pete, all last week said we got Notre Dame's got to win this game and win convincingly, and they beat
exactly.
Even though it's Army, they won convincingly. They're still top 25. But we're going to move into our parlay picks, boys. We got 4 good ones this week. Kicking it off with Michigan, Ohio State. Ohio State's got a 21-point, Michigan 21-point underdog. Over-under's 43. Ohio State minus 18. Michigan plus 1,000. Joe, rapid fire. Give me your picks.
Easy. Ohio State going to dominate. The only real question is it going to be a defensive domination or offensive domination? I think Ohio State is going to just blow them out. So I'm taking the over. So money line, points, over. Ohio State.
Pete, kick it to you.
I'm doing the same thing simply based on how Oregon played Michigan. I think it should be a similar type of thing. And I think last week was kind of a wake-up call for the first half for Ohio State. Like, you got to come out and play. So I think they're going to be ready to go. Everything. Ohio State across the board.
I think Ohio State's going to want to make a statement. They need to beat Michigan, so I got them covering these points. I think the over is just too low for me, so I'm going over, and I got Ohio State. Justin's the same with us. Ohio State, he didn't really put over under. It looks like he went over. I don't know. He's got his picks.
I'm sure he's taking the over. I'm sure he's taking it.
Yeah, it's too low not to take it.
Yeah.
Going off Kansas State, Iowa State. Iowa State 3-point favorite, 51 over under, minus 142. Iowa State plus 120. Kansas State. Pete, I'm going to kick it to you.
I think Kansas State wins this game and throws a little wrench into things. So I'm taking Kansas State to cover. I'm taking the money line, and then I'm going to take the over on it as well, just simply based on how they played Colorado and how they played some other pretty good teams in the Big 12 this year. I think Kansas State's going to kind of pull this out on the road, but they can do it. So I'm taking Kansas State.
Joe?
Yeah, I think, Pete, me and you are on the same page. I think the way this Kansas State and the Big 12's kind of gone, I think Kansas State's going to end up with the upset and throw some chaos in there. So I'm taking Kansas State with the points. I'm taking the over, and I'm taking Kansas State to win money line.
Well, not so fast, boys. I'm going with Rocco Beck, Jets, son of Jets, former tight end, Anthony Beck, got Iowa State winning, covering. I got the over, and I got Iowa State. All right, we're going to go to this. Okay. This one's definitely South Carolina, Clemson in Death Valley. The other we got two Death Valleys here. Clemson, 2.5 point favorite. Anybody want to push that game?
I mean, this game, I think
we got over under at 49. 135 minus 135. Clemson, South Carolina plus 114. Joe, your turn.
I think if this was at South Carolina, I'd probably believe a little bit more in Beamer ball. They've been playing great football. They've been playing the upset lately. I just think Clemson, they have to win, and they know that, and they need a little help. So I think they'll come out ready to go. So I have Clemson. I'm going to take the under, and I'll take Clemson money line.
All right, I'm gonna go here second. I've been putting myself last, but I'm usually a 2-hole hitter anyway. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Clemson's got to prove something, so I'm taking Clemson with the points. I'm taking the over and taking Clemson. My sister-in-law is a University of Clemson alum, so I'm going with Clemson this week. Pete.
Yeah, I'm taking South Carolina. I think they want to be a little in-state rival here. I think they want to spoil Clemson's season and the way that they played this season against A&M and Missouri and a couple of other schools. I think they're going to fucking take it to them, man. So I think it's going to go under. I think they're going to win by maybe 3 points or a touchdown. But I think South Carolina is going to win this game and end Clemson's season.
All right, boys. Game of the week. We got Texas A&M. We haven't. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think we've seen this game since like 2012. So I mean, this is his historic game. I'm pretty pumped for it. Winner take all. Whoever gets in gets it. Goes to Atlanta. So it's pretty exciting. We got Texas as a 6-point favorite. We got a 48.5 over under. Texas at minus 230. A&M at plus 190. Kick us off, Pete. What you got?
I mean, God, yeah, I really think with Quinn Ewers not being 100%, I think Texas A&M is going to keep this damn game close. It's at Texas A&M. It's 4:30 our time, so it's a night game. I think it's just going to be tough. I mean, with Ewers not 100%, I could see Texas kind of laying a little bit of an egg here, even though I know that everything's on the line. So I don't think Texas is going to lose, but I am going to take A&M to cover the 6 points, and I think it's going to – I'm going to take the over, but I think it's barely going to go over. I think you might have like a 30-27 game or something. So you might go over by a touchdown. But I'm going to take I think it's going to be a close game. So I'm taking Texas A&M to cover, taking the over, and I'm taking Texas money line.
Well, Pete, I'm with you on that. I think it's going to be a great game. Joe, what's your call?
When I first thought of this game, I thought it was going to be a clear cut, kind of like that Ohio State-Michigan game. Texas was going to run them over. But there's something telling me that, it's a night game at Texas A&M. And I know the last game that I remember watching Texas A&M night game was that ND game. And even though ND won, that's a tough place to play. Ultimately, I'm going to take Texas money line. I'm with you, though, Pete. I think it's going to be close. So I'm going to take Texas A&M with the -6. And I'm going to take the over. But I will not be surprised if Texas A&M ends up winning. I would not be
Same.
surprised.
Well,
Same
I'm
here.
with both you guys because, Kyle Field is a raucous place to play. They pack the shit out of that place. So it's a raucous place to play. I mean, I just think it's going to be – you got Marcel Reed, freshman, who actually went to Montgomery Bell High School in Nashville, Tennessee, right up the road from where I lived in Nashville, which the place was like a, insane football stadium, baseball stadium, just looked like castles everywhere. But I think I got Texas covering. I think Texas has to cover. I don't think Texas has a signature win on their schedule. If we're talking about all these other teams, Penn State, what is Texas's signature win? Their one big-time game was against Georgia in Austin, and they lost. So I think Texas has to have a dominant victory. I think they're going to have to beat them at least by 10. I'm going to take them to cover. I'm going to take the over. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I don't know, maybe a 50-point over-under. I do think this is going to be a great game because we haven't seen this rivalry in a long time. But I got Texas winning. I think they're going to have to have one convincing win on the schedule. Maybe that's just me.
I can see it. I can see it.
So we got Heisman race. Last week of the Heisman race, we got Travis Hunter at minus 1,000. We got Ashton Genty at plus 750. Ward plus 12. Gabriel at 66, and no one else is in the conversation. Final thoughts on we got the last week of the Heisman race. Obviously, championship week doesn't count. Who you got winning in New York, Joe?
I think Travis Hunter. I think the only thing I am going to say is I'm surprised he's that much of a favorite after losing this past week. I thought he was definitely going to take a hit. He made some great plays, but he also looked very human this past week. I think it's just, he's such a phenomenon and he knows how to market himself. That's why he's getting a lot more hype than I think a Genty would, who is at Boise State. So if I was a betting man, I'm betting on Hunter, but I hope Genty gets it.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. I would not be shocked if Genty won it, especially if Colorado comes out and loses again. So yeah, I'm actually, I'm going to have this slight edge to Genty. I think he's going to get it. I don't know how. I think Colorado's going to come out and play whatever. I think Genty's going to get it. So I'm taking Genty.
Yeah, I think Hunter's got it kind of wrapped up. What he does is just too much. How many snaps he plays is just too much. But I would love to see a guy from Boise State win the Heisman, and the numbers Ashton Genty is putting up is astronomical.
We've been saying it all week, all season.
Upsets and covers this week. Justin's going to kick us off. I'm going to do that for Justin. He's got his Utah. Oh, he's got Utah over UCF. He's
fading himself.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like, hey, I'm going to say this and then UCF will win. And, he's got Auburn covering against Alabama. He's watching Washington, Oregon. Joe?
Yeah, I have Vanderbilt covering against Rocky Top. I know Rocky Top needs to win, but, the way Vanderbilt's played this year, they'll probably lose, but I think they'll be close. And considering how one-dimensional Tennessee's offense is, I think Vanderbilt could compete with them. And then my upset, which I was surprised, Pitt to upset BC. I know Pitt's kind of down lately. They've had a couple bad losses lately, but they're still a good team. And I didn't think BC was that good, so I'm going with Pitt to upset BC.
Pete?
Yeah, so I got Oklahoma State covering against Colorado. They're being given 16.5 points. And I think depending on how Colorado plays, I think they got a good shot to beat them. And then I don't know, I didn't really listen to you too well, Joe, but I'm going to take Oklahoma to beat LSU. I don't know why I'm taking that as my upset. Obviously, I picked South Carolina earlier. This is a separate game. I don't know. They're rolling right now. I could see Brian Kelly losing this game and potentially being gone.
Well, I'm gonna go. I'm with you on the Oklahoma State. I think Gundy's gonna go out with a bang. and knock Prime down, but just the cover, maybe Prime wins by 3.
Yeah.
Let's go Oklahoma State with the upset. And then I'm going
There we go.
Memphis to cover against Tulane. The interesting thing is, what happens if Tulane wins the American Conference and bounces above a Big 12 school?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
What happens there? No one knows what happens. What happens? You got any thoughts on that, Joe?
Oh, I mean, you put them in. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You know, they're the highest 5th conference, so you put in Tulane, and you know the Big 12.
But then you have Boise State, who would be a Mountain West champ too.
Yeah. You know, let me double check real quick before I say anything.
I don't know how that works. I mean, does the Big 12 get just totally axed? Because you got to get 5 conferences in there.
I would not be surprised to see Tulane jump over ASU. I mean, if they win out, and Tulane I think is what 10-1. Their only losses to Ole Miss.
Yeah, they're 9-2 right now.
9-2, and they have a very decent loss to Ole Miss at the beginning of the season. I see them potentially, depending on how well they win and how dominant they are, I could see them jumping over an ASU that. Just the way their conference shook out, I could definitely see them jumping them.
Yeah, I mean, I just think shit gets wild. What do you think on that, Pete? I think if that happens, it gets wild.
Yeah, it does. It's going to be crazy. I'm kind of rooting for it to happen. That's all I'm going to say. I could see exactly what Joe's saying. I could see them jumping a Big 12 team. I kind of want it. Fuck it. Why not, dude? Let's get some chaos in here, bro. Let's go.
I mean, who knows? But I mean, they do have a tough game against Memphis. Was it?
Yeah.
It's Thursday night. Memphis is.
So we'll know before the weekend hits. Then we'll basically know Thanksgiving Day.
I mean, Memphis is 9-2. They have a great win. We're gonna go on to it. We're gonna wrap it up here. Cheers of the week. I'm gonna go first because I see Justin's, and I got to get mine out there first. I got 2, dude. I got 2. They're cheers, but your team sucks. Florida State, the only school in the FBS to not score 21 points this year. And Arizona State doesn't know how to rush the field. Just classic of Arizona State trash. It's a trash university. Can't figure it out. And I'm just waiting. Win the Big 12, fine, but you'll just get bent over the barrel, and we all know what happens after that. Justin has Auburn fans knowing when to rush the field, and Arizona State and Oklahoma State obviously don't know. Joe, what's your cheers of the week? Oh, yeah. Joe.
Pretty straightforward. Just cheers to everything to be thankful for this year. Happy Thanksgiving to you both, and to everyone watching. Have a great Thursday. Enjoy watching some pro football, some college football, some college basketball. It's the best time of the year. Football, sports, feels good, and I'm thankful for it. So cheers to that.
Pete.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best weekend of the year, man. I mean, literally the best weekend. So cheers to Thanksgiving. Love you guys. And then also cheers to Oklahoma for ending Alabama's season. I love it.
As one of my nephews, it's such a, he's got like a little sports class he went to for a little bit, and then my sister said what the name was. It was called sports ball, and I go, yeah, that's a woman who set that up. If
Totally.
I've ever heard of anything, a woman runs that, and it was a woman. And then
classic.
My nephew was out in 2 weeks because, it wasn't, she would just toss balls out and be like, oh, pick them up. And he wasn't about that. But Joe, great set. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's going to be a great day. We got NFL going on. We got college football. We got an unbelievable slate of college football. Boys, Tuesday nights, always great night for me. We get out here, talk a little college football. I'm jacked for the weekend. I'm ready for some chaos. Any last thoughts? Anybody last thoughts of what they're looking forward to besides some great family and food on Thursday and football.
Getting out for Black Wednesday and letting it rip. Letting it rip on Black Wednesday, baby.
You head down to Hennessy's and let it rip.
Tony's.
That's what you're looking forward to. Some fire.
Hell yeah.
You know
Hell
it.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been another episode of Touchdown in Paradise. I'm Russ Morgan, filling in for Justin.
I'm Pete.
I'm Joe.
You guys have a great night. Another great weekend of college football.
Later, skaters.